And that to me is like a million times more useful or more rewarding to kind of connect with a musician who's playing from their heart than anything else that I've encountered, really. So I'm really interested in music as this kind of great communicating thing, and looking at how we can cultivate, how we can discover our own voice in it. And merit, being as good as we can be, is not always how the internet kind of presents it to us.
This episode contains adult language and adult humor.
Since when have trumpet players ever been considered adults?
If you are easily offended by these types of conversations, consider switching to the oboe. Welcome to the Trumpet Gurus Hang podcast. I'm your host, Jose Johnson. My guest for this episode is Gerard Presencer. Gerard speaks from experience. Gerard has been on the music scene since the ripe old age of 11, when he became the youngest member of England's National Jazz Orchestra. He rapidly became a sought-after session player and a faculty member of the prestigious Royal Academy of Music and the Jazz Institute of Berlin. But Gerard has felt the need to shift from stage and studio to a simpler and purer pursuit of his love for music, and his advice about finding your own path, it's absolutely priceless. So, pour yourself a big glass, pull up a chair, and let the hang begin.
All right, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Trumpet Gurus Hang, and I am joined by I'm going to try this, Gerard Presencer, and
great.
All the way from Denmark today. So thank you very much for joining me.
Hello, very nice to meet you, and thanks for having me on. It's also, I've listened to a load of your podcasts in the past, so it's really nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, and just so we set the stage properly, I've been a fan of your playing, like so many people, got introduced to you first through the phenomenal solo that you did on Cantaloupe Island.
Thank you.
So, yeah, but we'll maybe talk about that a little bit. I'm sure you're probably tired of talking about that. But we actually got connected because I had on previously Tom Walsh, who was one of your students when you were teaching at the Royal Academy.
That's right.
Tom spoke so highly of. He said, "Oh, you have to get him on. You have to get him on." And I'm like, yeah, I need to get him on. And I just didn't know how to get in contact with you. And then the other day, I'm messaging with Brian Davis.
Yeah.
Brian Davis.
Oh my God, he has a mug. Wow. That's amazing.
He has an amazing mug, actually. You need to work on that. And
I need
Brian,
one of those,
You need to get him on the show. And Brian hooked us up. So it's really great because so many people that I respect have a tremendous amount of respect for you. And I have the playing that I've heard of yours is just phenomenal. I really love your approach to trumpet. So I'm really interested in talking with you about your development, your concepts, and your experiences, because you've seen a lot of action, my friend.
I have, and less so these days, but I have actually, and I sort of used my experiences for my teaching. Really, now that's how it's sort of life has taken me in that direction. Well, actually, I sort of made a conscious decision. I didn't want to do quite so many different things, but I value the time that I did do. There was a point in my life when I first came through. I grew up in London, and I started playing really young. And because of that sort of early experience, I did anything and everything that came my way in a very, very active music scene in London in the early 90s, I'd say, early 90s, even a little bit before that. So I was sort of playing professionally from my mid-teens onwards. And I probably wasn't that great, to be honest, but I think I was doing a lot of gigs because there were not that many other young players around who were prepared to do everything and anything that came their way. So I was quite fortunate that I had a chance to try lots of different things out. So it's been really, it's been interesting. I think a lot of my CV comes from that period of my life, but kind of the earlier end part of my career. And then I've steadily worked like a regular person for the rest of my working life. So thus far, it's not over yet, I hope. So, yeah.
Well, so when you say you started at a young age playing on the scene, London had it still has such a tremendous wealth of musical talent in general, but trumpet talent specifically. I mean, I can think of so many great players that are either in London or in the surrounding areas, from over the decades. And I think sometimes outside of the UK, unless you're a real trumpet geek, you really don't know some of those names, but you certainly know their impact. But so who are some of the people that were influencing for you and maybe kind of helped you to get your gig started?
Predominantly from the UK, you mean, like the trumpet players who were... Anyway, okay. Well, yeah, because I think my heroes are all from your side of the world. I think most of them. I'd say there was one trumpet player in the UK who was actually Canadian called Kenny Wheeler, and he was a big influence on me and probably everyone in the country, because he was such an innovative musician, both as a composer and as a player. But then, sort of apart from Kenny, then every other major influence was perhaps more familiar to you. So when I was a first person I loved was Louis. And then I got into, actually, I think the first person I liked was Roy Eldridge, because it was exciting. He was very exciting. And then I got into Louis, because obviously Roy Eldridge comes from Louis. So that's my very, very beginning. Then when I was probably in my mid-teens or early teens, I got massively into Clifford Brown, and he seems to have stuck with me, because it's remarkable what he does. Even now, you listen to it, it's crazy off the dial. Like, how did he come up with what he came up with? I still listen to him and wonder. It seems so incredible. And then I got, as obviously the cantaloupe thing will kind of show chronologically in my life, I got really, really into Freddie Hubbard. So, and I probably still am in a way. I'm still very much, he's still my go-to. I talk about him frequently in my teaching. So then Freddie, Lee Morgan, I think Lee Morgan very much so. I was really into his playing. Who else? I mean, those are the good ones. I love Blue Mitchell. I love Woody Shaw. I also love Chet Baker. And of course, over all of these people is Miles, who's just sort of out there on his own, being almost sort of like there's something very different about Miles, isn't there? Something otherworldly about what he brings to music that I can't really explain. So maybe we just say Miles and leave him watching over us. Oh dear. But yeah, so those are the kind of players I was still am really into. I wouldn't say that it's a weird one, isn't it? Because when you say that, it's like you're trying to sort of kind of figure out where I fit into that. And I wonder who I sound like in that. I don't really know anymore. There was a time when, obviously when I was 18, I sounded a lot like Freddie. And I would say that there are various points in my playing life where I have sounded a lot like my influences. But I think it's just a sort of percentage of all of those in my playing these days. I don't really think about it, I suppose. That's the thing. I just like to listen to them and enjoy what they do.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly going to be, impactful in terms of the way that you hear or the way that you think about music, because it makes that impression. But ultimately, what we're all trying to do is just to try and take all of the ones that have come before us and use their inspirations to make our own impact.
Yeah, I remember saying I was doing an album, and I had a really great piano player, and I was saying to him, could you play a bit like Herbie on this one? And I said to him then a bit later, could you play a bit like Chick on this one? And he actually got angry. He said, look, I'll play like me, all right? It was like, oh yeah. And it was like, when I realized what my faux pas, it was like, oh yeah, of course, that's really rude to say that to, and not that you were being rude, but just my perception of like, how do influences affect our development and how do we use them? And I think, for example, one really good one is I love Woody Shaw, but I can't play Woody Shaw stuff. I mean, I've tried, it's really hard and really incredible. And I was looking at, he plays lots of fourths, okay? So he plays lots of fourthy intervals in his improvisation. And I was sort of working on a on tunes with my students about getting some fourths into our language when we're soloing. And it was like, well, we could play it like Woody Shaw, but we can't play it like Woody Shaw. So rather than being kind of, pissed off about that, we could actually figure out a more lyrical, perhaps when I say lyrical, a slower way of playing that kind of information and actually making it quite somehow more, a sort of lyrical version of fourths. Because actually when you're opening up your language to have bigger spaces between the notes, then of course that could be perceived as more melodic in a way. So I'm quite interested in like taking sort of aesthetics of my favorite players, or things like their rhythmic approach. Maybe another thing that he does, actually, again, Woody Shaw thing, is he's really into displacement and subdivisions and things in his lines. So again, I couldn't really work out what he's doing all the time. And also I think it's perhaps like quite hard again, and I want to find a more kind of a slightly looser way of doing similar things. So I worked out a system of superimposing a kind of 12/8 thing over everything. And so that way I can kind of time my eighth note triplets together in interesting ways and sound actually kind of Woody Shaw-ish. Like, and I did do a thing, actually, anyone can try this at home if you want to, is like to take Clark 2 and put it into eighth note triplets in groups of 4. So that changes everything. I don't know if anyone's done that. I'm sure people have done that, but it's really fun if you do that. I mean, like, you can waste hours doing that.
Yeah, well, it sounds like I'm going to be wasting a lot of time.
You can. I'll send you some. I'll send you some stuff. But it's really, I love all that, because it sort of means that anything that you do, like if I'm playing my normal bebop eighth note kind of language, but I put it into eighth note triplets in groups of 4, it means I have absolutely, in a way, I've lost control of where everything fits comfortably. But then I have to sort of, I'm given new challenges to make it sound deliberate, to kind of say, okay, I've modulated early or I've modulated late to the resolution, and it's like, how do I make that sound deliberate? And it's actually kind of fun to mess with stuff like that.
Yeah, that sounds really cool.
I could go on, but it would be a long podcast.
Oh, well, so there's been some long ones. So,
okay. Oh, good. Yeah.
But I mean, what it sounds to me is that we have people who are artistes, if you will, and that are so they're so innovative, they're so creative, but many of them can't tell you how they think, why they think, or what, they don't have, it's just a very natural expression. And then we have people who are very thoughtful and intentional in what they're doing. And it sounds like you have that balance of having a very clear kind of analytical way of looking at the music, but also then being able to put that all aside and just go out and let it all fly. Yeah. So, I mean, that been part of like the way you approach yourself?
Totally. It's brilliant question, actually, because it's that balance, isn't it, in life, because we all have to practice and we all want to work on our art and perfecting what we do, so that when we go out and we play, we should be able to put that all to one side and just connect with what's going on around us, the environment, the people you're playing with, the music you're playing, to be like, to get a really the real thing, which is not what you worked on in the practice room. And actually, I just to say, because I used to, when I was working at the academy, I was the workshop booker for a few years, and it was really interesting and very funny as well, because you could get people talking saying all sorts of weird conceptual things, or also being very uncommunicative about what they did as well, and not being able to express what they were doing, when often it was really complex and really, really interesting and would be great to talk about. So but my background is that although I did have teachers, my teachers were not telling me a lot, actually. I think it was, we all have this a bit in our teaching, or when you see a young player coming through and they can do it, it's like, well, great, go for it. You don't necessarily have to get too involved with that. And that's what I think I grew up with. So I was doing it from such an early age. I was probably really confident as well and arrogant and thought I was great. So I probably wasn't that open to a lot of instruction. But for me, what's really important is that I obviously as teaching as well, I come across really naturally gifted players of all ages. It's not just kids; it's of all ages that people can come to me sounding brilliant and not really knowing what they're doing. And this is the point: is they do know what they're doing. They just haven't put a label on it yet, and I can help them to do that. But for me, that intuitive, somebody who's allowing their ears to guide them, that's not a disadvantage. But the thing for me over the years was like I was really successful really early in my life, so I got to be quite successful with lots and lots of work by my early 20s. And I was feeling really frustrated with my own playing because I didn't know how to develop it, both as technically as a trumpet player. I was hurting myself all the time. And then musically, I picked up so much by ear that I didn't know then how could I move it forward? How could I get something which felt a little bit more expressive to me? So I didn't want to sound like Freddie Hubbard anymore. I love Freddie Hubbard, but I need to be doing my own thing, and I didn't know how to go about that. So for me, theory of both of playing and also of soloing developed because I needed to move it forward, and that's the thing that I really want to kind of. But at the same time, I don't want to say to somebody who's really natural, that's not right. You're just doing that by ear. That you need to have. But I say, yeah, that's great. You could try this a little bit to maybe move it around something rhythmically. Or just to tell them what they're doing, like say, okay, you're playing a bebop dominant scale here, and it sounds great. So why don't you try and start that in a different part of the scale? Could actually make things difficult, but also raising someone's awareness is when you do it right, it's really exciting to watch somebody go, oh yeah, that's what I was doing, and it's like rather than kind of making it seem like like Dungeons and Dragons with lots of hidden rules and pitfalls, and oh no, that's all wrong. You can't do it like that.
Yeah.
Often presented like that in education. I think that I try to kind of think about the person that I was when I was 15, and that was somebody who's really enthusiastic about music and listened to everything. And didn't quite understand it, but just sort of copied my heroes as best I could, and got quite far, I think. But I needed a little bit of kind of explaining what I was doing, and then I could have moved forward a bit faster, I think.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, that's such a interesting dynamic that exists. I mean, it's certainly a dichotomy because, when it's all, and I hate using the word natural because,
I agree.
But when you already have that level of expressive intent, I guess I'll use that, and you have basic facilities, and you can get around the horn. Yeah, and I see this a lot with people who have perfect pitch. That it's very easy for them to copy things or to imitate sort of things, and it's great. But they reach a point where, like you were saying, they can't develop their own voice because you only know what you know. And then when they run into problems and they feel stuck, they don't know how to expand. So going from that technical side of understanding the theory and being able to think about things from that way provides them, it opens up the door for them for a different level of creativity. It's like almost like learning a new language. You're learning new vocabulary, I guess is the best way of saying it. But it's so hard because I 100% agree with you, because you don't want to squash someone's enthusiasm. You don't want to squash that natural ability that they have, that unique voice, but you also want to help them to see that just because this is the way that you're hearing it, right, that you've always heard it, doesn't mean that that's the way that you don't want to limit yourself to that, because there are so many other ways of being able to express yourself.
Sure, yeah, and it's so much fun to kind of exploring it. That's the thing. It becomes, I think, when you start out, it's all about making some kind of grade in your head. It might be the person who's really good at your band who plays the same instrument as you, and you want to try to get up to their level. But then once you kind of, it become that way of, meritocratic kind of climbing stops being that important, I suppose, once you get to a certain point. I know that sounds very complacent in a way, but I just felt like with soloing, it's got to go in different directions. I mean, just to give you an example, because it's very relatable to what we're talking about, but very recently, so I was playing, the reason I've been in Denmark, or one of the reasons I've been here, was because I was playing in the radio big band, and I was in that solo chair in the big band, playing anything and everything that was put in front of me. And that was really a skill that I've been trained up to do since I was like really young, because my teacher was in that position in the BBC band. So it was kind of like, it was on the cards that I would end up doing something like this right from the dawn of time. But I found that it came to the point where I was the guy who was like going to go, and I relate this to football, and I hate sporting analogies. When I say soccer, when I say football, the guy who goes on in the 92nd minute of in extra time to take the penalty solo. That's how it felt, because I would just get the one tune at the end of the gig, which was like ridiculously fast with all of the changes that no one else wanted to play. And it's like, oh, Gerard can do that. Oh yeah, he does that, no problem. It's like, and it's like, and in the past it would have been, yeah, I can do that, and I'd have gone down and I'd played it, and it would have been great or whatever. It would have been fast anyway, and high and loud and everything that it had to be, that I thought it had to be. And it just came to the point, it's like, yeah, I know that's what needs to happen there, but and I can really do it. I mean, I really can. I'm not showing off. It's just like I really have been trained for 30 years to do that solo. And it's like, yeah, but it came to a solo break. I think it might have been the last gig I did, actually. This is really bad, but last gig came to a solo break. It's like the band's like da 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 da, and it's like the drums stop. It's like 4-bar break for me to play a lot of very fast high notes. It's like, oh, I actually didn't play a note. Just waited for the rhythm section to come in there. Right. I think of something nice to play now. And it's like, it really is that you, I mean, that's an extreme example, but you really got to find what you like doing, and try to explore music in all areas of your music making, regardless of what it, however commercial it is. If you're doing stuff for the money, you can still sound like you. Even if you're playing a written part, you can still sound like you. And I think that's really what's guiding me now. And the thing is really when we kind of meet people who are feeling disadvantaged because they can't articulate they can't say what it is that they can do. It's really it's an unnecessary insecurity that they're carrying around with them. It'd be nice to say, no, I really like this and I like that, and I think that's a really good thing. Let's see if we can kind of polish that. Let's cultivate that a little bit more, and I'll show you what maybe you could take that in a different direction to sort of challenge yourself. Because I think for me, a great solo is a creative development. It's not a perfectly polished thing always, although I have been a bit that way inclined in my life as well. I've wanted to play the perfect solo. What is the perfect solo, actually? That's a good question.
And that is a good question. And what is your answer?
God, I don't know. I really don't know. I'm trying to find it. So I can tell you what I'm doing at the moment to try and find it, because it's a sort of way of. I noticed. Yeah, I was teaching a student. We were working on Milestones because it was a nice, easy tune. It was a kind of like a formative student talking about improvising and using a modal tune, and it was like what we listened to. What I noticed with Miles on Milestones is that every 8 bars, he plays a really strong rhythmic idea at the beginning of the 8 bars, and then he just kind of fades away into the distance. And then he comes back in about 8 bars later, and it's like again, and that's all he does all the time. And it's so simple. And then I noticed actually that so many people do that. So if you did that, like say in a solo of say you're in 4-bar blocks, if you play in a 4-bar block, play interesting idea in bar 1 and 2, and then fade away, almost playing nothing in bar 3 and 4. Or trying to resolve it in about bar 3. So you're almost like aiming for a resolution in bar 3. And often the chord progressions that we like, the standards, have modulation and quite interesting stuff going on in those bars I'm telling my students not to play in. And it's really cool. It sounds like Miles. It also sounds like Freddie. It also sounds like Louis. It also sounds like Dizzy. I mean, it's like when you start listening, Chet does it all the time as well. And it's a great way to work out playing over faster tempos, because it just means you kind of takes the pressure off you having to play to go for eighth notes all the time. I think it's really cool. So you just building space into it, breathing space, it's punctuation, like in the book. So it sort of starts to sound quite like, actually, that's what I should be doing. Because I noticed I did my first recording after lockdown I haven't done an album for about 3 or 4 years, really. And I did a side, I played as a side person on a quintet album last week. So I was quite interested to see all this work I've really been working on my playing for the last few years and with my students. And I'm sort of quite interested to see how it panned out. Did it work? Did all this thought about playing work? And by doing that, just that block of 4 thing where I'm backing away, was just a really nice way to start a solo. If nothing else, it's a really, really nice way, because it gives the rhythm section like, oh, okay, we can do something with this player. It's like there's interaction possible there. So it opens, it invites other people in to help you with your solo. And I think it also makes, just creates more awareness. I don't want to be the icing on the cake. I want to be part of the band. I think that's a really important part of a solo approach. So sometimes I think it's important not to be the star of the show on your own solo. And that's a tough one. That's a really interesting concept.
Yeah. And I think, we're talking about like, Miles as being kind of this island unto himself. I think he was definitely the master of that. Yeah. And his use of space, the simplicity in many ways of what he did. Like you compare what he, an iconic Miles solo to an iconic Freddie solo or Woody solo. They're worlds apart in terms of the technical demands of what's going on, but he was able to say so much with so little, and even Chet, the lyrical genius of what he did, and I think sometimes we, as players, we get so enamored with the pyrotechnics. The higher, faster, louder.
We can't help it. It's just
I'm kind of those guys too. So
Yeah. I know. I've actually, I have to. I'm plugging something now that it won't result in any financial gain for me. But I started it was almost in response to what we're talking about. I started a Facebook page, and it's so the opposite of fast, loud, and high is soft, quiet, and low. And so if you look up SQL for trumpet players, I have a page dedicated to, like, I've been going around looking for things to put on that, and it's all that end of the trumpet, and it is such a nice place to go. So on a quiet moment, there is somewhere now on Facebook for you to go and explore some really interesting players from all over the world. And obviously I've got Chet there and I've got Kenny Dorham there, but there's also some brilliant Norwegians and people from all over the world playing really beautiful trumpet. And I think it's a surprise because you hear people doing great things. I remember hearing Arturo Sandoval once at Ronnie Scott's years ago, and of course I would always go and hear him because you have to. It's like you've got to hear someone doing that to a trumpet, just like to go like, wow. I mean, whatever, that's just, you have to. And that's how I felt. And he just had some surgery, I think. It was years and years ago, and he was not playing, he wasn't going for it. And it was beautiful. Like really, like he's playing flugelhorn, playing quite a lot of ballads and stuff. And it's like, wow, that's why he's good, and I have the same feeling about Freddie Hubbard, is that when I was 15, I loved it when he was, going for it. But actually the same solos now, I listen to the rhythmic invention and the kind of interesting and harmonic relationships in his ideas that he carries through the solos. It's actually that there are things about our heroes that even though there are pyrotechnics there, that might not be why we like it. That's maybe a get out clause for pyrotechnic liking trumpet fans like you or I.
Yeah. Well, I think that sometimes it's that's what attracts us to it. And we, we copy the licks, so it's like, here's my Freddie lick, here's my Woody lick, here's my, So, but when you're copying the licks, it's not taking the solo in its entirety,
No.
the layers of complexity that they weave through that.
Yeah.
Because I know guys that can do that. I mean,
Yeah.
a couple guys just, you know, like they can just play Freddie all night long, and while they're playing the Freddie licks, it doesn't have what Freddie had.
No, not at all. No, not at all. And that's so exciting to realize there's something much deeper in there. I mean, he might not have known himself. That's the thing, isn't it, really? I mean, in a way, maybe he didn't. I mean, because he's so incredible in the 1960s. I mean, that to me, in the 1970s, he's great. He's absolutely amazing. There's some great albums of Freddie in the 1970s, but the 1960s is just this kind of, it's magic, you know, for him, because he's also playing with so many different bands. He's like popping up with Coltrane on one thing, and he's playing with Wayne Shorter and then with Dexter Gordon, and it's all really quite varied, you know, styles, and that stuff with Oliver Nelson. He just like he finds something different in all of the slightly different aesthetics that he's playing, and he's still obviously he's very, very distinctive because of his sound and his vibrato and stuff, but he doesn't ever really do what you expect. That he always does it. Something like, wow, why would you do that? There's an album, that Herbie album from the early 60s called Taking Off. And there's a blues on that one where it's just like, I don't know how he came up with it. You know, there's some of the things, it's so simple what he does, and it's so brave, actually, what he's doing. But it's all about his singing. I think that's how it feels to me. There's a vocal quality to his playing, which I think Miles has. I really like Blue Mitchell. I said that already. He has that too, and obviously Chet. And you know, there's different ways of singing, but they're all singing, I think.
Yeah. Well, that is a very good analogy for that. Yeah. And I think sometimes we forget that as players that.
Yeah. Well, there's a piece of metal in front of us. Of course, we forget that. We're going, what do I do with this? Yeah, it's really not the easiest instrument.
Yeah. So, you know, you obviously have a great passion for performing, but also a great passion for education. So, you know, what kind of inspired you to want to teach as much as you have over your career?
The money. Yes, if only. So no, it was. I always taught actually, even before I knew what I was trying to teach. I always taught because it was about sharing my enthusiasm and love of what we're talking about now with other like-minded people, and that was always the thing. So teaching was like that to start with. And then also for me, it was about trying to articulate, as I said, about this kind of desire to try to find. It's all been what I am the crash test dummy of my musical life. So teaching really helps me. I need to talk about it. I need to think about it a bit. I find that when I've just been a player alone, I think it's not as good for me musically. I need to have some time to try to figure out what I'm trying to say. Doesn't mean I can't. I can also not think about what I'm doing as well. I've done it all. I've tried it all over the years, different balancing acts. At this stage in my life, I don't feel that good about performing, actually. It's interesting to say that. I've done so much performing. It's been like 30 or more years of performing, and I'm not 100% sure I want to go back to it. And certainly not the way I was doing it, because I do want to decide what I play. And that sounds very arty. And I'm not trying to be. I think I came to the point where anything that I was being asked to do, I didn't want to do anymore. And that was like, okay, this isn't the music I'm being asked to play. This is about me, and just feeling as though I need to kind of figure out what it is I'm trying to say through music. So I kind of, it's been good. It's been actually a very positive point in my life to step back a bit. So I'm happy about that. But the actual the teaching thing was because of, as I said, like the things I didn't get when I was young. I think most of us teach in that way. Actually, we want to kind of compensate or figure out things that we would have done differently ourselves. If you could get in a time machine and go and teach yourself when you were a certain age, you probably have some quite different things to say to you than your teacher did at that time. Maybe you kind of go, if only.
Right.
so there's that going on, and then also I just really love the community of it. I love that we can talk about this stuff because we're absolutely, obsessed, fascinated with it, and trying to work out what it means. It's really it's a lovely thing to do. I just really enjoy it, and I'd rather kind of hang out with other people and talk about this stuff than go and play some meaningless TV show. For me, it's not everybody. And also, when I have done TV shows, I want to play it really well. That's not what I'm saying. It's just more that I think I want to connect with the things that I love about music more directly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that we all we go through a personal evolution, and the things that were important to us when we were in our teens and our 20s, as we get a little older, become less important. And I think if one thing, if I had to point at one thing that what we had to go through with the pandemic provided us, was it provided a lot of people an opportunity to slow down and to actually reevaluate their priorities, and when you're on that grind of the hamster wheel of gigging, sometimes it helps you to get off of it and go, is this really what I want to do? And if it is what you want to do, then great. When they open up, then you enjoy the gigs that much more.
Sure.
If you're able to go, well, no, hey, I really feel like my life wants me to go in this direction. Well, it gives you that opportunity to do it, and to do it with a clear conscience. So,
yeah, it's interesting to say clear conscience though, because it's like we should be gigging. It's like this kind of, and I often find myself apologizing for the decisions I've made in the last couple of years. Or like trying to put a case forward for why it's okay for me to do this, because I think I've done really good gigs. I've done gigs that people would want to do. I suppose that's why. It's like there are other people who would love to do some of the work I've done, and I've loved doing it as well at times. It's just that things maybe are not. It's not just, you don't just arrive and that's it. I've arrived. Life isn't like that, and it's really maybe important to acknowledge that. It's good. I think lockdown gave me that cathartic moment to decide whether I was going to go back into it or not. And I'm really lucky actually to say that. I mean, I had a sort of ideal of what I wanted to do. Also, my wife is a composer, a classical composer, and she's doing really great things. And I've been very fortunate also to play her music in the last 10 years or so. And she's written some great things for me to play. And it's really like the most challenging music I've had to play because it is just, it's really difficult, and really, really a deeper level of understanding than playing over a chord progression is required to play her music. So I've had a real kind of, I've landed on my feet in that respect, and I've had amazing pieces of music written for me to play, and I've got to play with improvising within classical chamber groups, and that's just been the most challenging thing I've ever had to do. And it made me have to reevaluate my approach to playing, and look at the technical approach that I was using and say, actually, maybe I could be a better trumpet player than I think I am. And I need to play more in tune, for example. I need to be able to play quietly, and I need to articulate things more cleanly, and I need to learn to improvise without playing any Woody Shaw or Freddie Hubbard licks. I can't play certainly no bebop scales. And it's been really, really interesting for me, that stuff. So I've got stuff in my my world that is really pushing my playing in a direction I'm very excited about.
Yeah.
I
know, like I did this is a number of years ago. I had a friend who was an artist, and both a visual artist and a poet, and he did a series of paintings, and it's such an uplifting topic on the Holocaust. It was a series of paintings, and each of them had a poem that was to express what the concept was behind the painting. It was basically a story of a family that, like pre-Holocaust, as things began, going through it, and then the final resolution. And she said, I always wanted to do this as a piece where it's the visual, the paintings being projected. She would recite the poem, and she said, I want music. And so she said, would you like to do this? And I was like, I've never done anything like this before. And it was supposed to be just improvisation. And so it's me on a stage, with all this other stuff going on. And it's just looking at the painting and then just trying to play something that I felt matched the painting. And it was challenging. I was scared out of my wits, but it was really liberating, because it's like, no, I'm not playing changes. No, I don't have to try and sound like anything. I just have to look at this and feel what I feel and listen to her words and just express that through the sound. And it was so liberating to me.
It's either really daunting or really liberating. It can be, or you're not going to respond. You have to. It's going to make some response come from your maybe really deep inside of you that you don't understand or can't express. And I think I've had a lot of experience playing free improvisation as well over the years. But it's whether you can actually let that through or not. So then it's really about you as a person, whether you're able to express or whether you're able to access those emotions and convey them on your instrument. I mean, that's a big ask what you had to do there. I find that really tough.
Oh yeah, it was.
Really.
And what was great about it is it kind of brought into play something that I heard Tim Hagen say at a master class, but years before that. And Tim is one of my favorite soloists. Just
me too.
So creative. But he was saying that you should start every day, like when you get your horn out of the case, you should start with like 10 to 20 minutes of just free play.
Wow.
Not I'm working on my bebop scale, or not I'm playing over blues changes or anything. It's just whatever you feel comes out the horn. No time, no style, no key center, no nothing. Just play. And he said that's the best, because you're then exercising your creative muscles. And it was when I did that, it was like, oh yeah, this is what he's talking about, because you're letting what you're feeling at that moment just come out the horn. And there's no right or wrong. You can't play a bad note because there's no
it's great. It sounds really, really good way to go about trying to, because also what he's saying really in a way is you're practicing being that creative, being able to access that depth to your improvisation, and also practicing genuinely being spontaneous. Because I remember that Lee Konitz did a workshop years ago where I was in London, and he said, if I'm in a bad mood, then you're going to hear that in my playing. If I'm in a good, I'm not going to show you all my best stuff every time I play it. You're going to hear the kind of the way I'm feeling that day will come through. And if I'm feeling a bit boring, I will sound a bit boring. And it's like, wow. I mean, obviously he's kind of an idealist in terms. I feel like that's not how I've been playing a lot of the time. I've been ticking boxes about you've got to deliver this kind of a thing for this specific style of music. And I think, and it's a big kind of leap of faith, or you're just kind of really exposing yourself as well. But it's actually, that can be really, like if you surprise yourself in your own playing, how amazing could that be? And you go, oh, that's nice about your own playing. I remember Jeff Keys, this piano player, saying in a workshop, you've got to record yourself sometimes and listen to your solos, not the bits that you know what you're doing, but the times when you don't, and listen to that and sort of try to get into that space and figure out what you're doing or what you need to do to go back there again. And it's, to me, that was like something you saying that to some 18-year-old students. They're just kind of, it's a little bit, maybe a bit too metaphysical or something for everyone to process it when they're trying to get the secret codes to the burning solo. But it's true, you've got to kind of go to those places and just inhabit them and start to feel more comfortable with them, and not just sort of think, oh, this is crazy, I don't know what's going on. You have to get past that.
Yeah. Well, it's the ability to, like, with anything, to make progress with anything, you have to be able to do that, is to actually look at it in a non-judgmental way, and so that you can identify, I mean, you always have those moments where you played a solo, even if it's on a recording, and you've had multiple takes, where you're listening back like a month later, and you go, oh man, I really probably should have done this. I should have taken it this direction. Oh well, you didn't. But then you kind of, if you put that back in your head, then you know that the next time you're in that situation, that's a possibility.
Yeah, totally. Actually, the thing for me is that, which I know it's going well, is when I do listen back to a solo that I've recorded, and I do something that I didn't realize I was doing at the time, and that's really, really fun. It's like, oh yeah, I did that. And it's like, that sounds quite nice. So I've tried to remember to do that again. It's like that. Then maybe that's what Jeff was saying. It's that sort of approach to playing. So you're actually sort of like observing your own playing as though you're external from it a little bit as well, because you should be finding stuff. You should be oh, okay, it's like that. I get that all the time. And actually it comes from my rhythmic approach. It's like if I've destabilized my rhythmic approach a little bit by, say, doing what I was do my 12/8 thing, then I stumble upon licks of things that I didn't know I knew. It's that kind of, I played a Louis Armstrong lick there by mistake. And it's sort of like something comes into my playing that I would never dream of playing. But it's not preconceived. It's just sort of, that's coming. Okay, I'll play that. It's like that. And it becomes less personal, actually, in another way, and then in another way more personal, because you're open to what's going on around you, and also that you're opening your consciousness up beyond the language that you've been learning that week in your practice room.
Yeah, no, that's
fun. It's fun.
Well, and we were talking earlier about your time at the Royal Academy, and at the Royal Academy, you obviously are getting in many ways the creme de la creme of the music world in the area in the UK, and even people coming from other countries coming to study there. When, as a teacher, when you're there, I mean, obviously you're trying to help your students to reach a level that maybe they weren't aware that they could reach. But sometimes I feel like when you're working with the highly talented, that there can sometimes be that barrier that they know what they know, and they're not always open to new information and new ways of thinking about things. So what I'm sure that you had a few students, and we're not gonna mention any names. I'm sure Tom Walsh was one of them, but I got to bust Tom.
He's very good.
No, Tom's great. I love Tom.
Yeah.
But when you run into that student who has so much more ahead of them, but you're trying to break through that kind of wall of resistance. What are some of the ways that you go about kind of trying to worm your way through their ego defenses?
By sharing the love of music with them, like sharing the bit that I love about it, which has nothing to do with whether I think I'm good or bad at this, and I'm sort of, I think I got that job at the Academy when I was young. Perhaps I think probably too young in a way, but I got the job because I was young and I was a kind of rising kind of star in a way in the scene at the time. And that was a sort of strange choice in a way, when they could have had somebody perhaps with a lot more experience. They wanted to do something maybe a bit different from what had happened, how it had been beforehand. So it's okay. I sort of understand why I was there. But yeah, we had, and also I was also the trumpet professor in Berlin at the Jazz Institute, all during the same period. So I was kind of doing these two jobs simultaneously for a long time. And it was the same there. It was perhaps even more difficult to get into Berlin than it was to the Academy in London, although actually, no, it wasn't. They were both really selective, and it was absolutely like one trumpet player maximum a year. I mean, it was that hard to get in. And so I was really, they make me look good. Obviously on my CV, I can say I taught Tom. And so I take full credit for his genius. It's all down to me. No, it wasn't. And actually, I taught him for the first year. He was at the academy, and then I moved to Denmark. So I didn't teach him for more than a year, 2 years tops. But it was more to do with when you get someone that good, you show them what you do. You talk about what you love about music with them. You say, this helps me. This makes it easier. Maybe talk about how to kind of focus on the important aspects of music to you, I suppose, and also to show them that there's got to be a natural flow to the development, really. So I think Tom was like pretty much arrived a full article, as you know, and that's kind of shocking. And I remember a colleague of mine said, these students are syllabus proof. It doesn't matter what you tell them. They knew they were good when they got there. They left good. Like I've had a few students like that over the years, and it is always a shock. There was one guy in Berlin, and he's worth checking out. He's a one to watch, called Dima Bondarev, and he's Ukrainian. He was in Berlin. This is maybe 10 years ago or something. And first lesson we were playing giant steps in all keys in 7. And it's like, and I had this guy for the next 4 years. It's like, what am I going to do with you for the next 4 years? It's like, I don't actually, and of course there is stuff to work on with him. It was stuff to work on with him. And because there's the thought process behind what you do. There's raising your awareness to especially someone who's so naturally able to play both technically and musically, that you need to sort of ask them what they're trying to say, and try to start to define their own thing, their own voice, their own preferences in music, what they're trying to create. It's not that easy. It's probably the hardest kind of student, but to have, because it's really hard, as we say, it's just hard to kind of find a way to get them to drop their brilliance for a minute and start to kind of explore things that are irrelevant of your level of ability.
Yeah.
And actually a lot of the students who, looking back, because I left the academy quite a few years ago now, when I moved to Denmark. So I kind of hung on in there for a while, and I think the academy cut me loose really in the end, because I was trying to do too many things all at the same time. But anyway, I was looking at I look at the students now. I'm really proud of the students, not just the trumpet players, but of all of them. There were just so many great players who are doing really good things. Often the ones that are doing the best now, I think professionally speaking, will have the most interesting careers even, but the ones who were not necessarily the stars of the year group that they were in. They were the ones who were maybe feeling a bit lucky to have got into the course and were kind of saying, oh yeah, I wish I was as good as that person, and not really kind of wallowing in their brilliance. Because there's a lack of complacency about their learning, and they're prepared. And it doesn't mean that they don't become brilliant. It's just that they were moderately talented and didn't have an attitude on them, and worked and got it together. And I've seen that there's some amazing trumpet players that I feel are. So Tom is a really nice mixture of both, because he's very humble about his musical profile, if you like, but he's doing amazing things, and that's great. So he's just doing music. He's making music. He's doing his thing. He's not saying I'm great, or you don't feel you're getting that from him at all. There's no air of that coming from him. He's just really into what he's doing, and he loves to roll up his sleeves and see how good he can do what he's doing, or just doing it, really, I think. Yeah. So it's not been, they're probably, though, there have not been the most rewarding teaching experiences for me, those kinds of students. I've really enjoyed doing what I actually far more now, where I don't work for any institution and I work with people who want to study with me. Doesn't mean they don't study at institutions, but I'm on my own, and it's so much more interesting. I've got students from all over the world, all age groups, all levels of ability, doing all sorts of different styles of music. And it's really, really fun, because I'm meeting interesting musicians. I got a guy last week started with me from Chile. I've never taught anyone from Chile before, and I was thinking, well, I don't know what I was thinking. I was just like, okay, let's see what happens here. And he's great, because he played for me, and it's just so, like, he's playing from here, and that to me is like a million times more useful or more rewarding to kind of connect with a musician who's playing from their heart than anything else that I've encountered, really. So I'm really interested in music as this kind of great communicating thing, and looking at how we can cultivate, how we can discover our own voice in it. And merit, being as good as we can be is not always how the internet kind of presents it to us. So it's just about, because most people aren't trumpet players, are not all kind of screaming trumpet players, and all aren't super shredding trumpet players. So we should maybe, when we're working on what we're doing, it should be more kind of like, let's look at our heroes a little bit more and think about what we're trying to get from them, and what we're looking, maybe also just trying to make a beautiful sound, make the trumpet easy to play, having good ideas on your instrument and being able to kind of get them onto your instrument as easily as you can. It's like that. These are really nice objectives that we can all achieve.
Yeah.
It's a it's a lot easier to deal with as well on teaching than the other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of it's interesting, like looking at your career and the arc that you've taken and the path that you're currently on. And I've had this conversation with a number of people about the thing that, like you were saying earlier, that you've had a lot of gigs that other people would they would be like the best gig in the world to have that, and it's like, hey, it's okay, whatever, and not in a negative way, but it just didn't speak to you. It's not you. And I think that so many times as teachers, regardless of whether it's teaching trumpet or anything else, we as the teacher have this concept of what success looks like, and that may not be what that person, what our student or the person wants or needs in their life. And having that ability to say, my job is to help you to become the best possible version of you, regardless of what I might think that is, just to help you to on your journey. So I mean, is that kind of has that been a theme in your life, as on outside of the horn as well?
Yeah, I think I didn't. In some respects, it wasn't. It was decided for me that I was going to be a trumpet player by my over enthusiastic parents. So it's okay that this all happens. It was done with the best possible intentions, but I think that then the rest of my life has been about, well, which bits of this did I actually want to do myself? And of course, I love it. I absolutely love playing, but I need to love it in my own vision, in my own way. So I think that the profession, of course, you're going to become a professional player of the instrument that you love playing if you're good at it and you work hard at it and you want to do, and then that's what I'm actually been working towards. So it's sort of like, then it's, life is about reevaluation. You don't just get to where you need to be and stay there for good. That, of course, that would be weird. And actually, our world is changing so frequently, and the kind of maybe the systems or the music scenes that we thought we would drift into, one could drift into and find yourself there forever. That doesn't happen anymore. So we do have these nice, although it's annoying and difficult in another way, we have these portfolio careers where we have to do different stuff, and teaching becomes part of that, for example, and playing different kinds of music, doing community music, perhaps, loads, just anything and everything that relates to something in what we do, and to not necessarily have it. It's not about how music provides a service, doesn't it, to society, and that's what I'd rather think about. The problem for me sometimes, I would say, in all this, is because I was so on track, like to win the trumpet race when I was young, that sometimes a perception of me as a teacher can be that I've heard this a few times from students who've been brave enough to get in touch for lessons, is that's never the way and also because I have had some Tom Walshes in my in my closet. Like I've got some very, very great trumpet players that have studied with me and still do, and I love that too. But sometimes it prevents people, puts people off getting in touch, and actually that's just not what it's about. And the way that I have been presented a little bit sometimes, or even presented myself in order to keep the gigs coming in, is that I'm doing something at a very high level, and maybe I think that puts people off, actually, because that's not how I think of music. It's just, if you're going to do something, you want to do it well. That's how I feel about playing. So I've done my best, but I don't want that what I do isn't about that. My best isn't someone else's best, and someone's better than me, someone's worse than me. That's really irrelevant. Maybe that's what we're saying when we talk about those great players too that we come across. Sometimes, you get to talk to, when you talk to really brilliant players, they're so interested in it, the music. They're not interested in their own level of brilliance. They're into it. It's just like they love it. It's their world. I remember meeting Enrico Rava, this fantastic trumpet player from Italy. He's kind of royalty in Italy. He's about 80 odd, and he's just brilliant, creative, improvising trumpet player. I met him in a bar in Copenhagen. He was at a coffee bar, mind. And I was walking past. It's like, shit, that's Enrico Rava. I have to go. It's like I had to go and talk to him. So I went in and I said, I'm really sorry, I'm a trumpet player. You're Enrico Rava. Hello, nice to meet you. And within about 5 minutes, we were talking about mouthpieces and our favorite Big Spiderbeck solos. I thought, this is great. This is what I like that, and I should have been sort of saying, oh, I really love your playing. I did say that, actually, I do. But it was more to do with the connection. He didn't want to talk about how great he was. He wanted to talk about things his mouthpiece that he's, likes, and his favorite 1920s Big Spiderbeck solo, which is quite a bizarre thing to talk about with somebody who plays so out there. It's really funny. So I kind of think that's where it leads. You start to realize that your favorite musicians, the ones who you even idolize, were probably just really into the music. Or if they weren't, then they were very fortunate to be that good without being into it in that way. But I generally find that people who I think are great musicians have a real love for it, regardless. It's a selfless thing. I think it's very much that way.
Yeah. Well, it's at the end of the day, we're all people. We're all human, and I think that's been one of the things. That's obviously one of the things that's driven why I do this podcast. But it's also because I've been in so many different situations where, like, the tables are turned. I mean, certainly you have the hero worship. You're looking at people that you admire and you respect, and then suddenly you find yourself in a different situation. And then you have these people that are looking at you and going, "Oh, I wish I could be like you." And it kind of creates this interesting juxtaposition where you're like, "Oh, well, I'm thinking of that this person is so great," and then I have people look at me and saying that I'm so great, but I'm really just a human. So maybe that person's a human too. And
I hope so. Yeah,
it gets us past that fear of, like, well, whether it's a musician or an athlete or an actor or a business person, it doesn't matter what they are. We're all great at what we do, but that doesn't mean we're great at everything that we do. And
no.
So I remember hanging out with a bunch of guys at International Trumpeters Guild one year. It was me, Wayne Bergeron, who else was in that group? Bobby Shue, Frank Green, but a bunch of really super talented trumpeters. And we're just all and we went about 2 hours without talking about trumpet.
Yeah,
and
that's nice.
We're talking.
I'd like that.
We talk about sports. We're talking about food. We're talking about this and that and the other thing. And it's like, oh yeah, these are people. And and it's sometimes hard to keep that in mind, that at the end of the day, we're all people. And as people, one of the things that we need, we crave is connection. And when we find somebody that we can resonate with, and for us, it's music, for other people maybe something else. But when you can resonate with someone, then you come away, hopefully you come away from the interaction with a higher level of energy, a higher vibrational state, if you will.
Yeah.
You've melded your love for something, and it's just you to feel better about what you do.
Yeah, connection. I mean, that's also then within music, that's why it's great to play music, is the connection part of it. And so much of our time is spent on our own practicing, or maybe it should be, but it's that's the thing. It's hard to sort of get ready for those connections musically if you're on your own in a room doing something repetitively to try to get up to the right level, and that's your way of thinking. So I think it's really important to get playing with other people. I really do. So that's got to be why we do it. But I think it's really nice to hear that, because I don't know all of those trumpet players you described, but I've met a couple of them, and they're just nice people that you'd want to sort of have a cup of tea with, even. It's like they're just nice people who are thinking about music. And I think the problem for anyone who's doing something where they work really hard and they're highly regarded in their profession, is that actually it's what they do. It's what sometimes Facebook is a little bit annoying in that way, is that you see musicians saying today's office, and it's like, yeah, you're on a gig, you're a professional musician, get over it. That's what we do. So I appreciate that there's a certain amount of that's about trying to keep it going and trying to keep work coming in and everything. But I feel like we're doing this, and that's it's fantastic. It's a real honor to do what we do, but also that it's like when you're in it, you're doing it. And I like that. I also like that very much. It's a very much a sort of as much as I'm a soloist, I've really enjoyed being part of a team in that way in music. I think it's been lovely to kind of realize that I can't bring everything to the table when I'm playing. It has to be about, you're only as good as the band that you're playing with. And I think that's really, really nice to know. And I think that any kind of communication, I remember doing a gig once where it was a quartet where it was supposed to be a very, very good band. On paper, we were all like very good on our instruments, and that's why we were booked. And it's like, and actually the first set went down, and it really wasn't happening. It just didn't really, nothing was connecting. Everybody was like really just kind of not able to be in the moment. And actually I said, it's not happening, is it? It's just not, it's not really, nothing's really going on, is it? And it was almost like a taboo that you should never say something like that. And just because I said it broke something, and then the second half was really good. So I'm glad I did. But I think a lot of the time is that's not always possible, because somebody could get upset. So you have to be careful. But I think it's okay to say if something's not going well.
Yeah.
As well, it can, at least you can start. Well, what can we do? Okay, how can we fix this?
If you don't identify that there is a problem, then that problem will get fixed. Anything will probably get worse.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of kind of mystique about music, that these things shouldn't have to be said, but I think they can be. I don't want to go. The thing that I find quite difficult, and I have to really steel myself from doing it, is not to take over. Right, to say, like, I did this album a couple of weeks ago, and I really felt that somebody needed to be there producing a little bit more demonstratively, and it wasn't happening. And I kind of felt my instinct to kind of go, okay, right, let's do it. It kind of felt like somebody needs to do it. And I thought, no, it's not mine. It's okay. I'm just going to be here and let them feel it out themselves, because, that's good for them actually to do that too, isn't it? People need to realize that something needs to, and if it's not, it doesn't have to be, you have to fix everything all the time. Anyway, that's my problem.
I have that streak as well. It's like I don't like to be in charge. It's my intention to be in charge of everything. But if there's a vacuum that needs to be filled, I usually end up being the person who fills the vacuum. And it's mostly because of just my passion of not, I'm not a perfectionist. It's just that whatever I do, I just want to do the best that I can, and I want it to be the best experience for everybody. And so sometimes I require somebody stepping in and just saying, hey, maybe we should think about this, or we should maybe go in this direction. And
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I just think it's really, I think it's really nice when you realize when I've been booking, like for example, when I've done gigs or I've toured with really famous people, and they're just really nice people, and you can have breakfast with them in the hotel and they're not going to be weird with you. I remember having nice touring experiences with John Schofield. He's just a really nice person to hang around with, and he's got no attitude on him at all. Perhaps he should, and a lot of my favorite players are like that. Actually, they're just very straightforward, and they're very, they feel like they're like you. You feel like you're like them, and it's that kind of feeling. We're all in it together, and I love that.
Yeah.
So that's maybe one reason why I'd go back to playing again, like in the way I was before, is to get back into that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have to choose the people you play with. I think then it becomes a little bit more discerning in that way.
Yeah.
So you make sure you're playing with people who have the right vibe, not just as on and off the stage.
Yeah. Well, it does come down to what's most important to you at that stage of your life, and you can't. Yeah, I think that's sometimes where we run into problems, because we're always comparing ourselves to others, and and having these kind of false ideas about what things should be. And when we can become true to ourselves, then that's when we actually do not only ourselves, but we do the world the best service. And we need, we certainly need people that are doing what you did in the earlier part of your career, that are just doing everything and on the ground. We need people that do that, and we need people that are going to be more selective and more very dialed in and specific on what they do. And there's space for all of us.
There have been a few students I've had over the years where I've seen them coming through, and they've got something really great about their playing, and maybe even like a sort of style of music which really suits what they do. And I said to them, just occasionally, it's kind of careful one to say, is like, why not become the kind of the brilliant player in all situations, and just focus on your own thing completely. And there is in the European sort of improvised music scene, there are people who do that, and often it's from the countries that really fund their artists to do that specifically. So you get quite a lot of really interesting Norwegian musicians, because their government will pay for them just to do their own thing for their entire life. I mean, maybe that's a bit idealistic of me to say that, because I'm sure someone Norwegian's going to say, no, that's not what it's like. It's terrible and it's really hard. But I reckon compared to a lot of other places, they get a lot of help. And that they do where I am in Denmark, actually, they do get a lot of help to just do their own thing. And sometimes that's a brilliant thing. And you just think, I wonder what would have happened if I just because I had solo projects when I was young. I was kind of going in that direction after Cantaloupe, getting my own band together, doing something a bit kind of my own thing, and which was a little bit groovy, a little bit funk-based sort of stuff. If I'd really stuck at it, if I just kind of stayed doing it and nothing else, if I'd said no to all of the other offers that were coming in to me to do other things, and I just said, no, this is my band, this is what we do, this is what I do, whether that would have changed the course of my career. And I'm not necessarily saying I wish I'd done that, because I'm not sure I entirely believed it. That's why I didn't do it. I mean, maybe I didn't realize that at the time, but some people, you look at them, you think, you should really just do your own thing. And I think these days, because the pathways are so unclear, I think there's more room for musicians, young musicians coming through to actually really specialize in what they're in a style of music that they're really passionate about, and just to stay with it for their whole life. Obviously that will develop and change over time, but it will produce interesting results. There's quite a load of Norwegian trumpet players who I watch, because they got this space to do that. A little bit, there's like Thomas Stanko, the Polish trumpet player. I don't think he was doing anything for anyone ever, that he didn't want to do. It's that kind of, he was really on his own journey. And we don't see, I think maybe there could be more scope for trumpet playing artists as well as other instruments, like to just really do this kind of playing, have that kind of a playing life.
Yeah.
I intend to have one like that myself, actually, from now on. But I might not as well. Doesn't matter. But that's what, if I'm doing it, that's how I'm doing it. I've just decided. Thanks.
Happy to provide you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Trumpet therapy.
That'll be my next podcast, Trumpet Therapy.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, you'll have a lot of people on that one, I tell you. Yeah.
All right. Well, I tell you what. I mean, we could certainly talk about all of this stuff for hours and hours, but I do have 4 specific segments we got to get through, and the first one is brought to us by our mutual friend, Mr. Brian Davis.
Okay, great.
And this in Airflow Music, and this is called Go Practice.
Okay.
And Go Practice is about kind of your approach to practice. And I've been asking, I have actually a very specific question or set of questions that I've asked everybody since I started this. And it's mostly geared towards those of us, me speaking about me, who are not the full-time professional player, and even when you are a professional player and you're out there working, you find yourself often limited in your ability to have a consistent practice routine. There are days where you've got 8 hours and nothing to do, and you can just spend your time shedding. And there are days when you don't have time to do anything before you're hit. So when you're if you're giving advice to someone about what are the essentials that you feel that should be addressed for yourself or for a player, what should you address every day? And then what are kind of things that you can, like, here's some gravy, when you got an extra time. Let's look at this one.
Okay, so at the moment, well, first of all, I got to this thing where I felt that with practice, the worst thing you can do, first thing, is to think about how good it sounds first off. So what you do critically at the very beginning of your practice really matters, so that you're not necessarily listening to what you're playing yet. So just give yourself a little bit of time to get the air flowing through the trumpet, and the different things to do. For me, there's a bit of Bill Adam kind of stuff, Clark things. But for me, the main thing is that I've actually quite got into fast flexibilities. So flexibilities played at high speed don't sound great at all. But when I'm not trying to play them correctly. If I wanted to play them correctly, I'd play them a bit slower. But what I'm doing is like throwing the air at the trumpet and seeing if I can click around harmonics on the trumpet without trying too hard. So it's not going to be perfect pitch, perfect intonation in my playing, but just to get the flow of air through the trumpet, to try to also to decentralize my awareness from this little place here into more of the rest of my body. So I do some lead pipe things. I do some very fast, as I say, fast flexibility things. I'm quite into the idea of playing things fast through the valves, because if you play fast through the valves as though it's a flexibility, then you later on when you're blowing, when you are playing music and you are controlled and you are using your valves more like they actually make a difference to what your pitch, then you work harder mechanically on the trumpet. So I kind of want to get our breathing quite sort of like simple in a way, like flowing, get my airspeed fast, not just at the top of the trumpet, but everywhere. So yeah, that kind of thing takes about 10 minutes. Then I need to introduce some really kind of like figure out, I just need to kind of position my single tonguing so that any kind of articulation I'm using that involves my single tongue doesn't interfere with this nice flow of air that I've got going. Okay, so once that's working, then I can practice a little bit of articulation that I use in my improvising or just generally. And with that, again, I want to kind of make it so that any articulation I use is built into a kind of, it sounds legato. So for me, a modern trumpet player, not a classical one, but it can use articulation and nobody will know about it if you're doing it right, but it has a strong rhythmic grounding in it. So I've got to get that going. And one of the things that I notice with people, especially professional players or people who don't realize, is that their articulation is often too hard hitting and too disruptive of the airflow. So you could set up a brilliant airflow and then go and mess it up massively once you start playing music. So I really want to kind of get it so the position where the single tongue hits inside my mouth, so I don't get in the way of I don't tongue into the aperture as much as I can avoid doing that. So often I'm raising people's single tongue a bit higher so that they don't. And then you're good to go. Now, what I just described doesn't take ages, and I spent years needing to do a lot of warming up before I felt like I was able to go and play. Now I think I can be warmed up in about 5 to 10 minutes, because it's about remembering what needs to happen and just kind of reminding your body of how it needs to feel, and then coordinating that. And that's actually a lot faster than I realized. So that's kind of fun, actually. And I'd love to show. I mean, if you check it, I've got a few things. If you look on my Facebook page, but actually I've sort of shifted things over to my student Facebook page recently, because I want to kind of make it a little bit more specific to the people who I'm working with. But I'm really into a kind of loose approach to playing to start with, and then as we get more into the music that we're playing or exercises that you want to play correctly, then you start to bring back the musician sensibilities and trying to play things in tune and everything. So it's hard to explain it without giving you the exercises. That's the thing. Yeah. I wouldn't say I'm definitely not reinventing I'm definitely reinventing the wheel, but I think that my approach is to look for the most comfortable way to play that you can have. Like, so sometimes when it's comfortable, you don't trust it because it's like, this is a bit too relaxed. You know, I had a student say to me recently, I was on a gig, and he said I was on a gig and it was playing the gig and it just felt a little bit like I wasn't taking it seriously because I felt quite relaxed. It's like, no, that's a good thing. That's an improvement. This is like repetitive stuff that he's been playing for a while. Started to think it was easier than it should be. That's what we want. So yeah. That's what I'm after anyway. So I don't know whether in terms of, so fast flexibilities, there's a thing that Ryan Kaiser does on a thing that Winton posted on YouTube a couple of years ago, where he's playing this really fast chromatic die from bottom C, just going down chromatically and hitting the fifth on like die, like a yodeling sound. And he does it ridiculously fast. And I spent ages trying to work out how he did that. As I'm sure anyone who's seen it is like going, how do you do that then? Because it doesn't sound possible. And it's because I think it's because the airspeed is really fast and he doesn't care about the fifth that he's jumping to. It's just sort of the air hits it for him. It just jumps up the harmonic. It clicks it up to the next harmonic. And so he's just hitting the bottom notes and the airspeed plays the other notes for you. So I've been kind of collecting exercises like that for about the last year, and I've built them into some exercises. I'm writing a book on it at the moment, so that should hopefully be around by the end of the year.
Well, awesome. I will certainly keep an eye out for that. And once the book gets released, you have to come back on the show.
Yeah. Oh, that would be lovely. Well, I'm never going to release anything on a proper company, on a proper publishing company ever again, because I did that with my first book and I made like nothing. and it did sell, but I made nothing from it. So this time it'll be, you have to get in touch with me if you want the book. So bear that in mind as well. I mean, I can be made friends with on Facebook. That's possible.
You're a friendly guy?
Yeah, quite friendly. I've actually make friends with you can follow me on my band page. That's probably the best place to go to because I put stuff up there and tell you what I'm up to. That would be great. And also, as I said, I've got this soft, quiet and low thing. So have a look at that for anybody who's out there, just to hear trumpet players doing things at the other end of the other end of the range and interesting projects and diverse forms of music as well.
I didn't think trumpets could play soft, quiet, and low, but
no, they can't. No, I just
Oh, the trombone.
All right. Oh yeah, I heard about that.
All right, cool. Well, let's get on to our next segment. Our next segment is by Michael Barkley of Barkley Microphones. This is called Sound Off. And Sound Off's about your approach to sound. And you have as we think about it, like in terms of your career arc, when you were younger, you obviously, we talked about the influences you had and, the sound that you had and playing all these various kind of gigs. maybe required a little more flexibility in your sound, depending on the gig that you're on. And as you kind of dial into creating your own unique voice, then you have your own unique voice. So when you're working with a student, how do you suggest they go about developing a sound that is both versatile, but also very personal?
I don't think you should try to be versatile. I think that's the mistake I made. That's one of the things I go back in my time machine to tell Gerard in 1985. I say, don't try and do everything. Just, find I think it's about, for me, one of the things, it's a bit like when I try a new trumpet, the first thing I do with a new trumpet is play it quietly and see what comes out. It's like that. So it also relates to what we're talking about within practice, actually. It's like, don't force anything to exist, just see what's there. Let your air and see how you can make something respond. So for me, developing your sound is about developing response on the instrument. So you have to find the response, the first response on your instrument, and become comfortable with that. That's everything to me. Then you can do anything at all. Anything. You can then be Jerry Hay, or you can be Winton, or you can be, there's so many different directions. But these are players who are looking for response first and foremost, and then you can turn the volume up or down beyond that. I'm going for a nice sound. I suppose my jazz background is a kind of dark sound. I think that's just what I gravitate towards. But actually, this kind of more classical improvisational stuff I've been doing, I've been looking more at a warmer sound. That's something to try to think about as well. But I've done a lot of pop things, and I played very bright, the bright end of the trumpet. And I have not changed from my 1C for a long time. It's been the same setup I've had for a long time. And it doesn't mean I'm like the most useful trumpet player, but I can do it. I can sit in a section and do that stuff, because I think it's about how fast you move the air when you play high notes, or when you're playing in that end of when you're phrasing in a kind of pop section. It's about the brightness of the sound, and that can be done through the speed of your air, and dealing with fast airstream and central tongue position, how you control that. I learned a lot from when I was in Denmark for a little while. Adam Rapper was playing in the big band for a while on lead, and I noticed that he didn't need to shift, he didn't need to change his gear that much to be able to play very, very different color kind of trumpet playing. So I decided I wasn't going to kind of get different gear for different occasions. So I think it can all be done, but you just need to think about how. Also, thing for me with pop stuff is all about articulation and phrasing. So if you work that out in advance, perhaps down the octave even, then when you go up there, then your approach isn't necessarily just about kind of trying to stay up at the top of the instrument, which obviously doesn't always make people that bright. Like, it doesn't give them a bright sound just because they're playing loud and high. So like that end of the trumpet doesn't need to be hit that hard, I think.
Cool. Like it.
Yeah. Good.
All right. Good. All right. Now, you're already kind of gravitated towards this. This is our third segment. This is called Geared Up. Geared Up is brought to us by Venture Out. I'm having trouble speaking this morning. Geared Up.
It's early, isn't it, for you?
Venture Mouthpieces. Venture, where technology, design, and craftsmanship intersect. Use the code TrumpetGurus21 to get 10% off your order. Yeah. Hey, there you go.
Okay.
This is about kind of your concepts of gear, but as you kind of been alluding to, you talked about your mouthpiece a little bit and the way you approach the horn. What are some of the other things that you think are kind of critical when people are looking for the equipment that's going to give them the best ability to produce the kind of sound and create the music that they need to create? Yeah,
I think so this is where the kind of versatility issue comes into the gear. I don't think you should get a great big jazz trumpet with all the mudguards and everything that some people play. And actually, even Winton doesn't play that all the time, does he, anymore? So it's like, and yeah, anyway, it's not a Monet thing. It's more actually the ones that look like Monets that aren't Monets. Because I think that a dark trumpet that only gives you a dark sound will not enable you to play a load of other things with other in other situations. So I want my trumpet it's amazing. I have the best trumpet ever, actually. I'm so happy with it. It's that I've never been able to say that, but I'm very pleased with it. But it's a guy in Copenhagen who's making these trumpets, and he's copied the early 1950s Bach, and it's not a medium large, it's a medium. It's very light, actually. So I play quite a smallish trumpet now with a big mouthpiece. And I remember the old lead trumpet player in the BBC big band said to me that and he was a kind of a bit of a Yoda guy. He'd been playing forever, and he said it's either a big mouthpiece and a small trumpet, or a small trumpet and a big mouth. Oh, hang on, that's not right. Big mouthpiece and small trumpet, or a small mouthpiece and a big trumpet. That was it. So I went for the big mouthpiece and small trumpet. But I did go through a period where I wanted great big trumpets that made me sound a certain way. But actually, I think it's all in here. It's in you that these different different timbre that we're trying to achieve. So I've got a trumpet that would do everything really nicely. I think it's just like a really good Bach.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
I like that small mouthpiece, big horn, or big horn, or small horn.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds very weird, but yes, I know we know what we mean. We know what we mean.
But because honestly, I've always played big horns, and I go to a small horn for a while, but I was playing a small horn, but trying to use the same mouthpiece that I was using on my bigger horns.
Yeah,
didn't work for me, and I'm back to using actually a much smaller mouthpiece than I've ever played in my life, but a slightly larger horn, and it seems to balance. I've got all this resistance up front, and then it just opens up as it plays. And
for me, I want a big mouthpiece because I think my embouchure was a little bit odd. It's just slightly unorthodox, and I quite like to get it all, as much of it inside the cup as I can. And I think that's just personal. It's absolutely about my face. Yeah. But then also, when I was a kid, I was touring, and it was this thing with the drummer from the Rolling Stones. He used to play jazz, or God bless him, but he used to play jazz. And we did this gig where Red Rodney came and guested with us, and he died about a year later. So I got to spend a day with Red Rodney. It was amazing. It's kind of surreal. I was about 19. He was so lovely, such a sweet guy. And he talked about trumpets, and it was just at the advent of big, chunky trumpets were coming through then. And he said, "Oh, that's really dumb." He was really very outspoken about it. And I really wanted one. I wanted to get the full. And he said, no, you need, and he had a really tiny, he played on a bench, I think, and he played a really small mouthpiece as well, like a Alcas or something. And he sounded amazing, actually. That's the thing. That's what I remember. It wasn't I don't know kind of what sound he should have got out of that horn, but it wouldn't have mattered what he played. It was really, but it was, he said, but I remember him saying, it's just got to be easy. You've got to make it you don't want to make your life difficult. It's hard enough. And over the years, that resonated with me more and more, because I think, any trumpet that makes you have to practice to be good enough to play it, I don't think I ever want to play that trumpet anymore. And also I've had trumpets that are kind of slightly, have brilliant sound, but they're a bit out of tune with themselves because they're a bit quirky, a bit old, or a bit, something. And I won't do that again. I will not do that again. It's not worth it. I need to make it nice and, straightforward.
I'm with you. I'm with you. Make it as easy as possible, especially as I get older. So,
okay.
All right. Awesome. All right. Final segment. Segment. This is the Robinson's Remedy Rapid Fire Rounds, brought to us by Robinson's Remedy Rapid Relief for your sore and tired chops. And this is just a series of questions that kind of bounces all over the place. Just need your quickest response from you on this series of questions. Are you ready, Gerard?
Okay. Yes.
Right. Here we go. First question for you. Who's the biggest influence on your life that is not a trumpet player?
As a trumpet player, Oh, God, you can't. That's impossible question to ask.
Who is not a trumpet player?
Oh, who's not a trumpet player? Oh, shit, that's even harder. Okay, can you move on? Can we come back to that one? Would that be all right? And I won't have an answer for you when we come back to it either. Is that okay? Next. Sorry.
Next question.
That's me.
What's your favorite book?
My favorite what? Sorry, I missed that one.
What's your favorite book?
Book. Oh my God, this is all. Oh wow. Okay, we'll have to come back to that one as well.
Come on, you're passing on too. One more.
That's really hard. I can't answer that question. I mean, there's so many things. I have a copy of the Dalai Lama's book next to my bed. That's probably, I can at least say it's next to my bed. But yeah, there's too many. Sorry.
All right.
Okay.
What's the worst movie you've ever seen?
The worst movie I've ever seen. I saw the latest Top Gun film because my son wanted to see it recently. That was really hilariously terrible.
Okay.
I did quite enjoy it, to be honest. But anyway, don't tell anyone.
Sometimes bad movies are good movies.
Yeah.
If you were not a trumpet player, what would you want to be?
A musician. Is that allowed? No. I think I'd like to do something. I'd probably like to write something. I would like to do some writing, thinking, writing. Yeah.
Writing. All right. What's your favorite drink?
A cup of tea, Earl Grey.
Okay. You could have a dinner party and invite any three living people, any three people in the world that are still alive. Who would you want to have at that party?
Well, these are really tough questions you're asking here. I mean, it's not like these are not quick fire questions. I think I'd need a couple of weeks to think about this, actually. Like, I should have asked you in advance, in fact, kind of thing. I don't know. I do hang out with nice people. I mean, I do have interesting conversations, but yeah, I really, that's a really tough question. There are lots of really, I mean, there may be a few kind of think, I'm really sorry. I'm doing really badly at this.
I mean, we get the Dalai Lama. I mean, he could sign. He
could come. Okay, let's have him. The Dalai and the Pope, and no, I don't know. Actually, I'm not going to have the Pope.
Dalai Lama, the Pope, and
someone else. Yeah, no, a comedian of some kind. Yeah. I don't know. Will Ferrell. He could be fun.
That would be.
Let's do that.
Will Ferrell, man, let's
do it. Let's have that. That's good. Okay, good.
Videotape.
Okay.
And so same thing, same scenario, having this dinner party, but you can't have any three people from history, any three people that are. Okay,
well, I think we should definitely have Clifford Brown because we don't know much about him really, other than, actually, do you know what? I did talk to someone about him once who was an alto sax player who played with him. Actually, a couple of sax players who played with him. And they all said he was really lovely. So I think I'd like to meet Clifford Brown. I think so. Let's meet Clifford Brown. And anyone else? Yeah, I mean, I can't just be trumpet players, can it? But I am intrigued. I'd quite like to I wouldn't mind meeting Charlie Parker, actually. That might be nice. And I'd maybe like to meet John Coltrane as well.
Yeah. Sounds like
let's go for those three. They're nice.
Good lineup.
Yeah.
All right, next question. Lacquer, plated, or raw?
Well, I am raw at the moment, but again, I'm not entirely sure of the difference of all of them after all these years, except I get green hands and it's annoying. So no, I'm out on that. Well, let's say raw just because I am playing raw. So that's what I'm doing. So yeah, okay, green hands it is.
Green hands, yeah, I'm the same way.
Okay.
What's your favorite quote?
It's going to be something kind of Zen-ish, but I'm not exactly sure what. I'd love to think about this more, though. Maybe there's a way I could I write in my answers to this section another time? Because there's going to be something lovely to say, but it's generally about less is more, kind of in that direction,
We'll take that.
Okay.
What is your greatest fear?
I think I don't like being trapped. I hate to feel trapped. I think that's what we talked about a lot today, actually. I need to feel like I have choices. So, yeah, that.
There you go. All right. You could be granted one superpower. What would it be?
Double high Cs any time of the day or night. Superpower, yeah. No, just long life, really. Yeah, it's immortality. Let's go for that. It's probably not very much fun, immortality, because you probably just see everything coming round again and again and again. Well, yeah, I remember that last time. Yeah, but let's go for immortality, because at least I can then choose what I want to do. I could probably spend a few more years practicing, get my high Cs together and everything. So yeah,
that's the way you get the double high C.
In 400 years, the new book. Yeah.
All right. What aspect of trumpet playing do you think is the most overrated?
The higher register.
After wanting to spend 400 years learning your double high C. Yeah.
Well, I don't want to have peak too soon, but yeah, that's what I've decided. Yeah. Okay.
All right. And what aspect do you think is the most underrated?
The soft, quiet, and low aspects. So that's 3, in fact, isn't it? But yeah, definitely the ability to play quietly and beautifully. I'm sure that's not really underrated. I think most of us know it's the best, loveliest part of playing. But still, let's say it's underrated because of the way that social media presents what we do.
All right, you can go back in time. We've kind of already time. You can go back in time and you give your younger self one piece of advice about music. What would it be?
Actually, when I was about the first time I made an album, I was about 15 or 16, and it was a live album, and this old piano player was a guy called George Shearing, really famous English, but he lived in the States for most of his life. He came to the concert. It's kind of, again, quite a surreal thing, like the Red Rodney thing I was saying. And he was introduced to me, and he said, "You're very good." He said, "Try to enjoy it." And that's all he said. And it was like, that's quite profound. And again, it's like one of those things is like, I didn't really know how to interpret that or perceive or to how to. I was just gracious and said, "Thank you very much." And that was that. But I think that's a really nice piece of advice, isn't it? Yeah. Totally.
I'll take it. And while you're back there, you're going to give your younger self one piece of advice about life.
Try to enjoy it. Actually, is that totally. God, why not? That's what it's all there for. If you don't enjoy it, I think you don't. There's no point in doing things that you don't enjoy. You have to enjoy it. You really do.
Yeah. All right. Final question for you, sir. What do you want your legacy to be?
Relaxed trumpet playing. Relaxed trumpet playing. That's what I want it to be. Yeah, definitely.
Oh, okay.
Comfortable, relaxed trumpet playing. That's what I want it to be.
Comfortable, relaxed, enjoyable.
Enjoyable. Yes, that too. Okay. Yeah. Great. Yeah, good.
All right. Well, I tell you what, man, this has been an absolute joy getting to know you.
Oh, you too. Really lovely to talk to you. Thanks for the time. Really, I've enjoyed it also.
I certainly appreciate contributions as a performer, as a teacher, and I'm just looking forward to seeing what the next chapter in your life brings. So,
thank you. Well, it'll be. I'm just doing my thing on Facebook. I have no intention of interacting with organized publishing or record companies or gigs or anything that I do like that. I'm really kind of like rejecting that and doing my thing. So keep an eye on me on my Facebook page if that's okay. That's the place to be. And it's really not. I don't really want to promote anything other than what we talked about. Actually, I don't think I ever will. I think that's where I'm at. So
that's good.
Yeah.
Just to be. So so folks, if you want to find out what's going on, just make sure you follow the links in the show notes, and you can check all that good stuff out. So I guess that's a wrap for today. So thank you for joining us for this episode of The Hang. Make sure you like, subscribe, share with your friends, and if you have suggestions for a future guest or topic that you'd like me to discuss with someone, drop me a line, and I'll try to get to that. So until next time, folks, peace and slide grease. We out.
Thanks for hanging with us today. This podcast is all about creating deeper connections through our mutual love of music and the trumpet life. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast And also like and share this episode with a friend. We want to see the hang grow for show. Please support our sponsors and consider becoming a personal supporter of this podcast as well. Remember, for less than the price of a bottle of valve oil a month, you can keep this podcast moving smoothly. The Trumpet Gurus Hang is recorded at the Candy Factory, a co-working space and social club located in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Jose Johnson is the executive producer. Post-production editing is by Mitch Bowers. Our opening theme song was composed and performed by Lexi Signor, and our closing theme music comes courtesy of The Greatest Funeral Ever. Incidental music is by Ethan Swayze and Jose Johnson. Graphic design by Ann Kirby of the Sweet Corps. The Trumpet Gurus Hang podcast is produced in collaboration with the So Good Lancaster Media Group.